Hi, Geoff here, and I'm at Zaytuna Farm with a natural pool being built. Here's my son Daniel. Dan's born and bred permaculturist all his life, and he does a lot of earthworks and hires machinery specifically for a job, but also does natural pools. So that's what we're calling this. This is a natural pool next to a house site at Zaytuna, and it's actually all in natural material, except we've got geofabric, yeah?
Yeah, I'll put geofabric to try and stop the clay sediments coming out into the water, just to keep it cleaner. I've also laid inside some polymer as well, because it wasn't all built in clay, so I've lined it with clay that was imported, but then also added some polymer. So the geofabric holds it together, gives it a nice dark, shaded appearance behind the rocks as well.
All right, so I'm going to get Dan to walk you around and explain this system. So this is something special. Any of us can do this. A little bit more electricity than just a bubbler lift pump pool, but a stunning result. Okay.
Right, so other than the geofabric, everything in this is just natural. We use clay to get our seal. We have used a little bit of polymer, but it actually filled up with water before we, like, in the middle of this whole process. So it actually holds water without the polymer anyway. The three pipes here, these are bubbler lift pumps. So using bubbles to lift up in the water column and pull water out of the pipe that goes into this gravel bed here. I also have, which I haven't put on yet, but it's in place where that orange bit in the bottom is. I also have there is a large bubbly diaphragm at the bottom, so that'll help create a large amount of circulation in the water column, as well as a large amount of diffused oxygen. The other pipe that's on the far side over there, so that's our water level. So that'll overflows into a pipe system, which discharges it into the side gully. You'll see another pipe in the far corner. So that's actually that's part of the higher energy consumption part of the system. That's a jet blower to push water out from the shallow area out into the deep area to help circulate the water around, which is from a pool pump. But there's a skimmer box over there, so to push the water in that direction, and then that sucks it back in again. The next part, which is a bottom-up filtration gravel pit, sometimes also called a bog filter or a wetland filter. So the pump pumps the water into the bottom through a perforated pipe, which then pushes up through large gaps in a plastic structure, basically. It's about 30 centimeters deep.
You're using bread crates, aren't you?
No, I used plastic pallets.
Plastic pallets.
Yeah, so there's 4 in there, so they're double stacked. They hold the weight. If you've been watching people who do natural swimming pools or natural pond systems with filtrations, like this, bog filters, they use special crates, but they're extraordinarily expensive. And I decided to try the cheaper method. Seems to be working fine, holds the weight. And it's got larger rocks, medium rocks, and then the gravel that's on top. And the water gets pushed up from the bottom up to overspill back into the main water area. Now, this results in a slowdown of the velocity of the water as it gets pushed up through smaller and smaller pieces of rock, and the sediment then falls out and falls to the bottom. There's a screw cap there, so you can put a sump pump in and try and pump the sediment out, slightly angled down towards the opening.
Well, this looked like a bit of a waterfall going through here.
Yeah, so this will flow through. This bit here will flow water through here, trickle through. So this will have a small amount of water level in it. Put some reeds in here, or some edge plants, some marginal plants, stuff that doesn't mind being under a shallow amount of water. And then this will flow down and cascade over some big rocks there. And I've lined it up to conveniently land right where the jet blower is. So it can come down, fresh clean water comes down, hits the jet blower and gets pushed to the middle of the pond.
And this is all water plants. This is lilies and things like that.
Yeah. Anything that grows in the shallow water up to 30 centimeters. And this will just be all plants of different types. So stuff that'll grow out of the water, but even the short stuff that grows in the shallow water that's under the water, I think they're quite important. Especially it has lots of little nooks and crannies for small crustaceans, small fish, snails to hide in and create habitat for. The plan is I've got a little bit of a shelf running along there, not much, just on the edge of water. There's also a slight change on this side, a little bit deeper, to maybe try and at some stage position some pots of plants, just to give a little bit of feature around the pond as well.
That's near the skimmer box, is it? And below.
Yeah, so that's the skimmer box. Yeah, you can see there's a little bit on the other side of the skimmer box. There's one on this side, but it's just out of the water. And again, I was thinking the same thing, so it's got some sort of dimension to it. You can plant some as part of the landscaping feature, and you can see one on this side, which again is about 50 centimeters deep along there. So there's the potential to put some lilies in there, just in some pots.
All these rocks have to be placed by hand.
Yeah, these are all placed by hand. Yep. Other than this bit, well, some of this bit here in the bog filter, because I did that early. I placed that with not the ones on the outside, but the deeper ones, the bigger rocks. Well, actually, technically, I didn't place them with the excavator. I brought them over here with the excavator and then placed them still by hand.
Right.
So, but everything's been placed by hand or by a wheelbarrow. I mean, if you having an excavator here on site, and people that do this often will still use an excavator, but you're still lifting the material up, and you're not often dropping it out. It's often being taken out by hand, so it can be gently placed. So it's neatly stacked. So all the rocks are stacked by hand, all neatly positioned so they interlock. There is some slight movement in some things, but when it's underwater, you'll have that pressure of the water pushing against it. It's not like it is dry out in the air. Like I'm standing on the edge of this.
And that's one of the planting spots there.
Yeah. So
it's just a level.
This is just the level. It's actually the same level as underneath that.
Oh, look, here's some of the unskilled labour arriving. Mr. Sam Parker Davis. Just the sort of character you want to lift rocks all day.
No. He's actually really good at stacking rocks. I'll give that to him. He's actually quite talented.
It's probably all that prison time he's had to do, you know.
Zaytuna.
Yeah, Zaytuna. He's not a Geoff UG, not yet.
I will agree with that.
All right, so what's this big machinery thing up here? What's this?
That's the pump
with the high-tech cover on it.
That's our temporary cover. It's supposed to be a good pump, but not be stupidly expensive. So you can set a timer and control all part of the pump, 4 different speeds. My intention was just to run it on low for this application.
So you've got a filter in there, you're sort of cleaning the pool at the same time?
Yeah, so there's a coarse one in there, there's one in the skimmer box as well. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's got a pass in there as well. I thought about getting a bit more fancy and having another filter, and I just thought the amount of debris that's potentially going to fall in the pool is probably not a good idea to get too filtery with it, because then it's just going to get blocked.
And what's this funny little set of tubes here?
Yeah, so this goes to each of the bubbler lift pumps, so we can control the amount for each one, so it's all variable. So these are non-return valves. So there's the bubbler, the blowers there. That controls the valve for everything. That goes to the diaphragm, which is that there. So these are quite interesting.
Where's that go?
That goes in the bottom.
Ah.
It goes right in the bottom, and it
looks like a sort of hot water bottle. What's it do?
So it's got the right sort of perforations in this rubber top. to create the right shape and sized bubble for maximum oxygen diffusion. So it creates bubbles that are supposed to be similar to the shape of red blood cells. So they're sort of donut-y, but with no hole in the middle.
Good for predatory fish then. No? All right. So just get them excited. So where's the pipe going?
This just screws in with it's a 25mm fitting. It's same size as pipe. Goes right to the bottom. But it's all, these things are all serviceable, so this all comes off and it can be replaced. That it can be unscrewed. It's also, when it's deflated, it actually seals itself, so water doesn't actually get into the air tube.
This is very technical. So we've got a very well-serviced wildlife pond. The wildlife gonna love this, yeah?
Sure. Yeah.
What's this drain coming from? What's that?
Okay, so I had a little bit of an issue where I originally built this retaining wall and the drainage behind this, because there's a lot of water there, because just like this tree is just here is a swale that's been in. When did you put it in 2001?
Yeah.
Yeah. It works quite well, which results in a lot of underland water flow. So there's a ridiculous amount of gravel behind this retaining wall, but one of the drains came out here. So, and one goes out the other end, but I don't want any surface water going into the pond because then it makes it dirty. So from behind the retaining wall, the drain pipe goes into this pit in here, but also I've shaped this so that the water off the house pad comes round from this side of the house pad anyway, because the other side goes in the other direction, as it should. Comes around and goes into this pit. And then there is a pipe that runs along here and discharges into that gully, just this side of that big tree there.
There's underground drainage that excludes any interaction with the pool.
Yeah. Try and keep the pool as clean as possible. So it comes out of that pipe there.
There's a pipe here.
Yeah.
And that then goes on down a natural gully flow and actually underneath the track and on down to a little dam.
Yeah.
So that's taking that surface water away from everything that's going on.
It also acts as the first spillway for the pond. So that pipe, that T-pipe there is the right, I've set that to the right height. I'm quite happy about that because that's actually a flanged end which perfectly lines up with the right height.
So this here is the height of the water.
Yes.
And that conveniently goes into the land drain that goes underneath the whole event and away. Got a lot of little things. This thing looks like a little horn for a car or something. Looks like it.
Yeah, so
we play the Colonel Bogey or something.
With a small amount of water flow, it coming out of this pipe creates a large amount of surface flow. That's the intention.
This is going to look spectacular. What about this? Like, I suppose the skimmer box is just like a normal swimming pool, is it?
It's a one for a pond.
Oh, it's a pond. So it's a pond skimmer box.
It's a pond skimmer box. So we've got the float skim bit at this end. It's a bit dirty from the rain we had. And it's dirty inside too. Still. It's just got a coarse basket and a fine basket. So that's how much it rained. It's inside it. Yeah.
And that's just to trap like leaves and bits of debris.
Yeah, just the coarse stuff, leaves and that.
And then this just...
Yeah, this has got a little float on that, so it'll just it works like a normal skimmer box. So I pull.
And the stones that you're piling here in this labour of love, that I'm sure Mr. Parker Davis is just loving the job, right?
He loves the love. The rock love.
So that's coming all the way up here.
Yeah.
And across the top, like a landscaped gravel.
Yeah, so this side here, we're keeping it that level. So we've started that level over there. So there's a little row for vegetative landscaping above waterline.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're going to do
vegetative landscaping. Do you like that terminology? Yeah, go on.
But on this side, because this is going to this ends up being a drain on this side over here. So this ends up being a drain, but also a footpath. So it'll be a footpath to go over to the pump to service it. And it also creates a a footpath to come to the requested jump-off point.
Jump off. Wildlife jump off point.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that the
Duck launching pad.
that's it. That's launching pad.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
crocodiles if you're in the tropics.
Sorry.
And crocodiles if you're in the tropics.
Crocodiles.
Yeah.
Sure. So we're going to come up with the coarse rocks, big rocks sort of above waterline, and then we're going to go to some of the smaller stuff and then into the gravel on this side. So it'll end up having a gravel mulch, basically, for landscaping that blends into a footpath.
Hence all the different sized rocks over here looking like a quarry, and the traxcavator to lift it, potentially. All right, so one last question. What's this area with no geofabric on it?
Yes, so that's our ramp down at this present moment to get us access, but it'll end up being 2 staggered beaches.
Oh,
So we've got a pile of poor sand over there.
so you've got the sand ready to make a beach.
Yeah, so this will be a beach.
What else do you want in one of these
There'll be a
systems?
staggered wall goes down to a deeper beach. So that'll be sort of just in the water.
That's sort of, for a wildlife pond, that's sort of a turtle spot, eh? Turtle Beach.
Turtle beach.
Right.
And then down to
Sounds like an exotic location, doesn't it? Turtle Beach. Yeah, sorry, go on.
And then it'll go down to just another drop off into the deeper part. So staggered bits within the water column, which is important. It's often something I incorporate into pretty much all of my dams, if I have the room, is staggered shelves. They're when I'm doing something that's for the wildlife, the amount of detail that's under the water that no one will ever see would blow some people's minds. So the amount of level and intricacy in what goes under the water is really important when you're wanting to have it for wildlife. The heights, the depths, the angles, the way the water can potentially move rather than stay still is quite important. I did one a year ago or so it was an old clay quarry, one section that was just for wildlife, because most of it was 8 to 9 meters deep, almost vertical walls. But there was one section I hadn't finished yet, which I turned into a wildlife section, because the rest of it, there's no wildlife at all because it's too deep of water. So, yeah.
Exotic stuff, many connections. The connectivity is mind-blowing, but I'm sure the reaction will be even more mind-blowing. There you go. Stay with us, and we'll keep you posted on how to do a really special job when it comes to aquatic systems. We've got a lifetime of skills to share with you.